Hey everyone, in this particular video I'm going to be referencing an article out of Quillette. Now Quillette is a site and an organization that has now been set up to offer counter opinions and narratives that challenge the political orthodoxy or status quo of the day. Because you see out there in modern academia that you have a lot of leftist, postmodernist, cultural Marxist rhetoric being espoused by those who are very much entrenched in academia and those who are the thought leaders of Western society. But we're seeing that, whether it's Jordan Peterson and his YouTube channel or Stefan Molyneux, who's been around with us a long time, going on 12 years now with Free Domain Radio, there are people cropping up actually all over the place these days to challenge the political orthodoxy or the ideology or the rhetoric being espoused by those who represent the status quo or the established ruling class. And I'm very much grateful to see these alternative sources for news and information propping up, because it helps people like me in my endeavor to help properly educate and inform the people, or to at least offer them a different perspective than what they're used to hearing, which actually is a sad reality all on its own, because the kind of things that you'll hear from those who represent publications such as Quillette or Stefan Molyneux or Jordan Peterson are actually the most reasonable people that you'll ever hear. But that's that great divide when you're constantly being inundated with political propaganda and ideologically driven perspectives. Just the very pretense or premise of hearing the truth can sound outright shocking and an assault on your senses. It's a shame that we've got to that point, but we are here, and the only way to break free from this quagmire is to properly educate and inform, and like I say, offer counter narratives, opinions, or stances in regard to the major issue facing us today. This one, the particular headline is Video Games and the Male Meaning of Life. Now this was published on December 14th, 2018, and it was written by Andrew Yang. Now there's a particular quote contained before I actually start into the actual body of this article that I just want to reference. Virtual worlds give back what has been scooped out of modern life. It gives us back community, a feeling of competence, and a sense of being an important person whom people depend on. Jonathan Gottschall. When I was 7, my parents bought me and my brother an Atari 2600, the first mass game console. The game it came with was Asteroids. We played that game an awful lot. One night we snuck down in the middle of the night only to discover my dad already playing. My brother and I loved going to local arcades and tried to make a few quarters last as long as possible. It was the perfect set of incentives. You win, you keep playing. You lose, you're forced to stand there and watch others play, hoping that someone is forced to leave their game in the middle so you can jump in. We became very good at video games. My favorite was Street Fighter 2. Actually, I don't know how old this person is that's writing this article, but it sounds like something that's a Gen Xer, because it's resonating with me big time. Matter of fact, with the 2600 series, yeah, Asteroids was one of the very first games, and that was a pile of fun back in the day. If you saw it today, especially the younger people, you'd be like, what? That looks so lame. But yeah, for us back then, it was quite cool, to be honest with you, because it was all new to us then, right? We became very good at video games. My favorite was Street Fighter 2. I memorized the Mortal Kombat fatalities to inflict graphic harm on defeated enemies. On the PC, I was hooked the first time I played Ancient Art of War when I was 9. I gotta say too, just let me again, Street Fighter 2, that's so funny, because Street Fighter 2 and Mortal Kombat, once again, two more games that I really thoroughly enjoyed myself. So I think I would have a great time discussing this particular period in history and time with this gentleman, because I very much remember that, yeah, video games in those early days and those inceptions that came about, yeah, it was our way of playing out. Now, instead of going battle in the school ground, well, we'll do it in the video games instead, right? It was our way to vent some of our frustrations, but in an area that wasn't causing harm to anybody, right? Because that's the thing, especially if you were a young guy that maybe was picked on or bullied by someone bigger than you, well, you could never go out and beat up that bully. Well, many of you couldn't, but you could go to the video arcade and pretend that you're beating up that bully, right? But once again, it was a peaceful interaction between human and machine, and nobody was harmed along the way, along the process. As I got older, real-time strategy games like Warcraft and StarCraft arrived to combine efficiently building armies and settlements with defeating live opponents. My friends and I would sit next to each other in a house with several network computers, taking on strangers and talking trash. The amount of time I spent on video games dropped dramatically after I graduated from college. I wanted to go on dates, and playing video games wasn't helping. I developed a notion that virtual world building and real life world building were at odds with each other. I started reading books on investing and financial statement analysis, which seemed to me to be the real world analog to becoming good at video games. By the time I started dabbling in games again and asked my brother-in-law to school me in Defense of the Ancients, Dota, over the holidays, they had leapt forward to a point where I felt old and slow. Memorizing key commands seemed beyond me. That said, I still understand and appreciate video games on a visceral level. I even imagine that I could get into them again. They speak to a primal set of basic impulses to world creating, skill building, achievement, violence, leadership, teamwork, speed, efficiency, status, decision making, and accomplishment. They fall into a whole suite of things that appeal to young men in particular. To me, the list would go something like gaming, the stock market, fantasy sports, gambling, basketball, science fiction, geek movies, and cryptocurrencies, most of which involve a blend of numbers and optimization. It's a need for mastery, progress, competition, and risk. As of last year, 22% of men between the age of 21 and 30 in the U.S. with less than a bachelor's degree reported not working at all in the previous year, up from only 9.5% in 2000. And there's evidence that video games are a big reason why. According to a recent study based on the Census Bureau's time user surveys, young men without college degrees have replaced 75% of the time they used to spend working with time on the computer, mostly playing video games. From 2004 to 2007, young unemployed men without college degrees were spending 3.4 hours per week playing video games. By 2011 to 2014, the average time spent per week had more than doubled to 8.6 hours. The economists conducting the study, led by University of Chicago's Eric Hurst, strained to figure out whether men who were already detached were playing video games to pass the time, or whether video games were actually causing them to drop out. Evidence pointed to the latter. Their research indicated that improved technological entertainment options, primarily video games, are responsible for between 20 and 33% of reduced work hours. The trends are different for women, who have not seen the same increase in gaming at the expense of work hours and are more likely to return to school when out of work. For many men, however, games have gotten so good that they have made dropping out of work a more appealing option. When I play a game, I know if I have a few hours, I will be rewarded, said one 22-year-old who lives with his parents in Silver Spring, Maryland. With a job, it's always been up in the air with the amount of work I put in and the reward. Jacob Berry, a 21-year-old in Michigan, finds it easier to get excited about playing games than his part-time job making sandwiches at the local Jimmy John's, particularly given the sense of community he finds online. He plays up to 40 hours a week, the equivalent of a full-time job. How exactly are these game-playing men getting by? They live with their parents. In 2000, just 35% of lower-skilled young men in America lived with family. Now more than 50% of lower-skilled young men live with their parents, and as many as 67% of those who are unemployed do so. More U.S. men aged 18 to 34 are now living with their parents than with romantic partners, according to the Pew Research Center. Video games function as extremely inexpensive entertainment on a time-use basis. After one invests in a console or computer, the marginal cost is near zero. Gamers can log hundreds or thousands of hours for the cost of one game or rental subscription. Time spent gaming is what's known in economic terms as an inferior good. The poorer you are, the more of it you consume. Recent studies found that households making between $25,000 and $35,000 a year spent 92 more minutes per week online than households making $100,000 plus a year. The image of legions of men in their parents' basements playing video games for hours on end may seem pathetic or sad, but their satisfaction level is high. Happiness has gone up for this group, says the University of Chicago's Eric Hurst, despite the high rate of unemployment. Hurst describes his findings as staggering and observes of his own 12-year-old son. If it were up to him, I have no doubt he would play video games 23.5 hours per day. He told me so. If we didn't ration video games, I'm not sure he would ever eat. I am positive he wouldn't shower. Video games are fun and communal. Nowadays, they're also so well designed that many almost simulate jobs if a job's progress were measured in minutes and hours instead of weeks and months. In many games, you perform a variety of mundane, repetitive tasks in order to build points or currencies or accrue items. You then use these items to make yourself more capable. You complete quests with your friends or against the computer. You experience a continuous feeling of progress and accomplishment. As one can imagine, the problems come later. Playing video games as a pseudo job that doesn't pay can be fun, social, and even cool in your teens and 20s. By the time you're in your 30s, your friends may have moved on and you become the loser shut-in who lurks around the local GameStop. There is some evidence that these young, lower-skilled men who are happy in their 20s become much less happy in their 30s or 40s, says Hurst. Their work skills and prospects will be limited, and competing in the workforce will be harder and harder. To the extent they even want to go out and start a family, it may seem more and more unrealistic and out of reach. They are likely to stay detached and may drift from video games to gambling, drugs, and alcohol. Indeed, the most recent general social survey showed that 31% of working-age men who are out of the workforce admitted to illegal drug use in the past 12 months. The annual time use survey in 2014 indicated high levels of time spent attending gambling establishments, tobacco and drug use, listening to the radio, and arts and crafts as a hobby, with over 8 hours per day spent on socializing, relaxing, and leisure. The same surveys showed lower likelihood of volunteering or attending religious services than for men in the workforce, despite having considerably more time. Every society has a bad men problem, says Tyler Cowen, the economist and author of Average is Over. He projects a future where a relative handful of high productivity individuals create most of the value, while low-skilled people become preoccupied with cheap digital entertainment to stay happy and organize their lives. Games have come a long way since I was a kid, and they're about to take yet another leap forward. Virtual reality headsets are creating experiences that will take simulations to a whole new level. Digital entertainments will get better and better. The analog and the real world will become less and less appealing. Before long, video games, virtual reality, and pornography will merge into new forms of immersive experiences that will be more and more compelling. On a pure enjoyment basis, it's going to be hard to beat. Imagine a 21-year-old college dropout who is not excited to make sandwiches at Jimmy John's and prefers his gaming community. You could say to him, "Hey, this Jimmy Jobs job could go places. Sure, you make $8 an hour now, but maybe if you stick with it for a few years, you could become a manager. Eventually, you could make $35,000 or so if you really excel and are willing to work long and hard hours, including waking up at 5 a.m. to slice up tomatoes and cucumbers every morning and commit to it." The above is possibly true, or the retail district around his Jimmy John's could shrink and a management job might never open up. Or Jimmy John's could bring in an automated system that gets rid of cashiers and front of house staff 2 years from now. Or his manager could just choose someone else. I can't really say that the food service job is more intellectually stimulating or social than playing video games. The main virtues seem to be that it pays more, imposes discipline, has face-to-face contact with other real humans, and might lead somewhere. In previous areas of growth, it really might have. I sympathize with this kid in part because I feel like the trade-offs are more difficult than most people realize. If I was given the choice between a dead-end, low-end job for months on end or hanging with my friends playing video games, it would be very easy to choose the latter. The consequences are somewhat vague and down the road. Men imagine themselves to be kings, warriors, CEOs, athletes, ladies' men, geniuses, soldiers, workers, achievers, and part of a band of brothers. All of these things are possible online. Of course, I believe that people should go out into the real world, get a good job, fall in love, get married, become a homeowner, have a child, be a good parent, leave the world in a better place, and do all of that stuff. I've tried to do it myself. It's the substance of life and humanity. It requires a degree of evolution and positive social reinforcement. particularly trying to be a good parent. Let me just say, I'm just going to, before I finish this up, and it's only a few paragraphs left, but I'll just say, I've been very much into competitive sports and like I say, building engines. I am your typical guy, kind of a guy, that blue collar kind of a dude, and all about like the adrenaline rush. But I'll tell you, I'm also a father and the significant other of a woman I've been with for 28 years. And I'll tell you, all of those other things, as much as I enjoyed them, and I still, like to this day, I'm still a kind of an adrenaline junkie, like, and even mixed martial arts and stuff. I love competitive sports. I love individual sports. I love competition, just the sheer pleasure of competing with people, because whether I win or lose, it's always raised and elevated me in some way, because like I said, well, when I lose, I just see that as, well, how can I improve myself to do better next time? But all of those things, like I said, they've all played a key and pivotal role in forming me as the human I am today. But if there's one area that has played the most vital role in making me who I am today and giving real meaning to my life and bringing that true happiness that nothing else has been able to substitute, is the power of love, is the power of family, is the power of having that reciprocal relationship with another human being where it's not forced, no one imposes it on each other, but it's accepted and embraced just by sheer fact that we have a tremendous amount of respect and admiration for each other, which comes out in the form of love. Video games, there's lots of things that we as human beings can use to try to circumvent or overcome our natural tendency to seek out real love and tangible relationships in our life. Like I say, there's lots of ways, lots of areas that we can try to get around that. The modern iterations are now like video games and virtual reality. In the past, it was different habits and behaviors and social interactions. But at the end of the day, love, let me tell you folks, love, that's what's going to help you out the most going forward. That's what's going to give your life true purpose, true meaning, and true value. And yes, being a good parent is another thing. Even though both of my sons are in their 20s and both living out on their own, I still feel as a parent, while I don't try to impose anything on my kids. That's one thing I learned very early on, is just kind of have that live, let live mentality with your children. Give them some good guidance, give them a good moral compass, set some ground rules, and then just let them go. And I've watched and I've seen how that's been beneficial, and I've seen them flourish in their own personal lives as a result, as a consequence of that. But yeah, being a good parent, like I say, that is something that has a sense of meaning and fulfillment that you can't substitute that with anything else. Same with your interpersonal relationship with your significant other. Actually, it's even more amazing when you think about your significant other, because at least with your kids, they're the biological derivatives of your own composition, right? Whereas your significant other, for the most part, they're usually complete strangers, come from a completely different history and background and family structure. For two people to come that were strangers, to come together and to have that kind of love and to build the kind of bond that lasts throughout their entire lifetime, yeah, you can't substitute that for nothing. No amount of money could ever replace or substitute, nor would I ever want it to be. I love my lady so much that, like I say, someone could come to me tomorrow and offer me $1 billion. I wouldn't trade her for all the money in the world, because money, I know that money, I'd get a lot of initial pleasure, but it's not going to be that long-lasting love, that long-lasting pleasure, that long-lasting meaningful relationship that, like I say, it's what has culminated to the point that has made me who I am today. But this version of achievement is not going to be sustainable for more and more Americans. The jobs are going to lead nowhere and then disappear. There will be very limited social reinforcement. The incentives to stay immersed in the virtual world will rise as the world outside gets harder and less welcoming. Billions of dollars will be spent facilitating their immersion. A number of my guy friends have gotten divorced in their 30s and 40s. Others have become detached from society. Male dysfunction tends to take on an air of nihilism and dropping out. The world and relationships take work. You gird yourself for the workplace in a suit of honor. If you ever take it off and stop working, you get swept away. Many men have within us the man-child who's still in the basement. The fortunate among us have left him behind. but we understand his appeal all too well. He's still there waiting, ready to take over in case our lives fall apart. Andrew Yang is a candidate for president in the United States in 2020. He is the founder of Venture for America and the author of The War on Normal People, of which this is an adapted excerpt. Follow him on Twitter at Andrew Yang VFA. Excellent article, and I can't wait to get this video uploaded and shared to people, because I recognize, especially those from the millennial generation and even those from my own generation, Gen X. Yeah, I forgo the gaming, because like I did find that lady that meant something in my life, and I did build a family with her that gave me that resonance, that meaning that has fulfilled me and is still fulfilling me going forward. But I do recognize that a lot of people haven't, and especially those coming up today of the millennial generation, or even the ones coming out of them, Gen Z. Yeah, I don't want to be the one to tell people what to do, but yes, you need to build those kind of interpersonal, real, tangible life relationships, because that's going to be what's going to be your best chance going forward to have any semblance of not just happiness, but of real meaning in your life. And at the end of the day, it's that combination of happiness and meaning benefit you for the rest of your life, and it's also going to benefit the rest of society as a result and as a consequence. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.